This rematch is going to be important. It's going to solidify which team has been improving more and at a better pace than the others.
Smoothie forced to run away. They're going for the steal, and it gets picked up by Bjergsen. It is TSM who win the fight up. 2 kills and a Baron, the triple for the mid laner.
Last time we went up against them, we won 2-0, and I don't think they've improved since then.
The stun out from Jensen, though, and it's not going to matter. Popskill didn't stay alive. He still gets shut down. The CC is too much. These solo laners are dead, and that's going to be all she wrote.
I think the seed actually means a lot at the end of the split. Winning against TSM is just as important.
Goes looking for the axes. They're going to get a bit here, and Jensen's in there as well. Going to get the stun onto the tanks to look for double hit. That's going to be one picked up.
We're going to beat them pretty handily. I think it's going to be pretty easy.
Welcome to week 5 of the North American League Championship Series. Fans are reporting for cheering duty as our spring finalists face off for the second time this split. Big matchup between TSM and C9 coming up first tonight as Sneaky and Jensen make their way into the arena, getting ready to do battle against the likes of Haunter, Biofrost, and the rest of TSM, who we see making their way into the arena as well. Beautiful sunny afternoon here in Los Angeles. Bjergsen and the rest of the squad as well following them in. And a look at the leaderboards before we kick off our day. Jensen topping that kills per game as well as the KDA charts. Smithy, though, over on Immortals, we'll get to him in a moment, but he's the leader of the player of the games. We'll see if any of the guys can make moves on those leaderboards today. Hello, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson. Here to analyze and chew bubblegum is Aiden's Irene Moon. How you doing today?
I'm all right. And I'm all out of gum.
Out of gum? You already make me a liar on day one. Analysis it is. That's all we got for you then. Before we get into the day's matches, let's look at how the teams stack up. Immortals earned first place after their 2-0 last week, leaving Counterlogic Gaming and TSM hot on their tail in second, with Team Dignitas and Cloud9 contesting for those top spots from fourth. Now we'll see who can knock down their competition with our matches today. It all starts with a battle between longtime rivals aiming to continue their climb, TSM versus Cloud9. And after that, Niski hopes to help his new team rise as Team Envy faces off against Phoenix 1. Now, you can't talk about Cloud9 versus TSM without talking about the matchup in the mid lane. The two Danes, Bjergsen and Jensen, have been smashing throughout their careers, are continuing to smash here in the summer split, and this is going to make for a very exciting mid lane matchup today.
Yeah, especially since right now you can see all the statistics. Jensen actually beats Bjergsen in pretty much all those significant statistics right now, so he's been performing better, but there is something to note where Bjergsen has been playing things like Zillion, the Galio, a little more supportive, so showing a diverse style, whereas Jensen is kind of the crux for everything that's going on in Cloud9 right now.
Now, this is specifically referring to, this split stats. What about historically the matchup between these two guys?
So I was doing a bit of digging, and I was looking at Jensen and how he performs because he's been such a dominant laner. Overall, in his entire career, at 15 minutes, he averages up 11.2 CS, which is
absurd.
That's monstrous if you just keep that throughout your entire career, regardless of who you face in the NALCS. But against Bjergsen specifically, he is actually negative 3.7 at 15 minutes. So he beats everybody, but up against Bjergsen, it is kind of that kryptonite that's going on.
Right, beats everyone but Bjergsen as well. C9 with him on the roster, I know, does have a losing... Well, historically, C9 has a losing record against TSM by only a short amount, a slightly larger margin with Jensen and the newer roster, actually.
Yeah, in terms of Jensen versus Bjergsen, it's 11 wins for Jensen, 18 for Bjergsen. But in terms of C9 versus TSM overall, it's 28 wins for C9, 30 for TSM. So if C9 2-0 here, they actually tie the all-time record.
500 through 60 games, that would be absolute insanity. One can only hope for a very tight matchup, but we talk about the importance of the mid lane. That's not to disparage the other lane matchups that take place here between C9 and TSM. And most specifically, I want to talk about the top lane matchup because the first time these teams met here in summer, we had Ray in the top lane. This time around, Impact's going to get the start.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Haunter had to play against both in the spring finals, and it seemed like Ray actually did better against Haunter in that series. But starting Impact changes the whole face of C9. They communicate a little better, they make a lot more proactive plays, but it hasn't been that same kind of start for Impact where he's actually down in CS throughout the majority of the lanes. He's playing tanks, which are kind of going out of style slowly, where you can kind of lean on Shen, but with Doran's ring nerfs, Galio nerfs coming through, there isn't as much for Impact to really grasp at here, so he has to pick up some other things.
Right, we want to see him get back to that maybe SKT, Jax, split-pushing threat in the late game. Who knows, maybe we'll get it. But outside of having to play each each other this week. Both teams have a very tough schedule on top of it. TSM also has to play Immortals, and Cloud9 also has to play CLG. This is all leading up to their trip across the Atlantic out to EU for Rift Rivals.
Yeah, TSM have to play the #1 team, and they have to play Cloud9 from Spring Split. That was second place. So their schedule is pretty much as hard as it could get for them, whereas C9, they have to play Counter Logic Gaming, who looks really hot right now, as well as TSM. So like you said, this is probably the best practice that they could get, though, in the North American LCS before they go off to Rift Rivals. But this match here in particular, because they're both going, will kind of come into it and be like, which one of these is the #1 team for North America at that international
Right,
tournament?
we have the standings where TSM's the first place team from Spring, but there will be that notion of whoever wins this matchup is the best team representing North America going into Rift Rivals.
And the fact that TSM plays C9 and Immortals, they have a chance to beat C9 and a chance to beat our #1 team right now, and then come in very strong into Rift Rivals.
Some thoughts from us about this matchup before we send it over to the casters. Jensen also shared with us how he's approaching today's matchup. Take a look.
I kind of feel like we have something to prove when it comes to playing TSM, but at the end of the day, it's just a regular split. People don't really like weigh too much on those matches and results. I'd say I want to beat them in playoffs more than anything. Regular season is kind of like, it'll be nice, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I just kind of think of it as another match that we have to win.
Hello, everyone. I am Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and casting alongside me is the patron saint of going hard in the paint, Joshua Jat Leesman. Are you ready for this?
I am. I scored about 2 points per game in high school, so I'm not sure if that's a true statement, but we're good to go.
That's what we're going to be going with today. We're pulling up to our first series as Cloud9 takes on TSM. Both these teams desperately want to prove that they're on an upward trend that cannot be stopped.
Yeah, and after shaking off some cobwebs from weeks 1 and 2 after MSI, TSM comes into this match on a pretty dominant win streak, 4-0 match record, but also a 10-game win streak with their last loss being game 1 of their series against COG back in week 2.
Cloud9 also come into this match in a similar situation, though, recovering from a tough week 1 and 2 at the start of Summer Split.
Exactly. I mean, Cloud9 is similarly off to a rocky start. You can see they have shown improvement in weeks 3 and 4, and Reaper actually talked a little bit about this in a video they released today about a status update. And most of Cloud9's early struggles have been attributed to their top laner. He said Impact is actually playing at his lowest form ever, as well as some communication issues with Ray taking a break for medical issues. So even with that, Cloud9 is still trending upwards. And what I love seeing about matchups like this, about top teams, is someone's got to lose. These teams don't lose very often.
Exactly. At the end of the day, only one gets to continue that win streak. But now, we're going to check out the starting lineups. On the blue side, you know them, you love them. It's Cloud9 with Impact in the top lane, Contracts in the jungle, Jensen mid, Sneaky and Smoothie bottom lane carry and support respectively, and Coach Reaper.
Fancy looking lineup graphic for a fancy game. Up on the other side, it is TSM. Hauntzer in the top lane, Sven Scaren in the jungle. We got Bjerks in the mid lane with Double Lift and Biofrost in the bottom side with Coach Park.
Now, going into this matchup, it's always fun to see these two teams go head-to-head, and Cloud9 definitely has something to say and something to prove, considering they were the ones who ended up coming up a bit short in the spring playoff grand finale. They're also the ones who lost the last time they went head-to-head earlier this split.
Exactly, and even these next 10 days for Cloud9 is almost a high-pressure situation akin to playoffs if they want to kind of reprove themselves in that sense, because as the analyst desk was talking about, they play TSM and CLG back-to-back days, then they go to Europe, play against the top 3 teams in Europe, and these are the types of intensity games that Cloud9 need to be able to prove themselves with, because Jensen talks about winning when it matters. You need to practice for that with high-pressure games.
And we talked a little bit earlier about the stats for Jensen and how right now it's looking like his stats are extreme, right? He had better numbers than Bjergsen in all of those categories. And I remember having this conversation the other day where we were talking about Jensen and his comparison to Bjergsen, and how a lot of times you'll see fans citing those things as saying, oh yeah, Jensen comes up with all these stats where he's actually showing up better than Bjergsen in this area, and this area, and this area. But where does Bjergsen show up? He gets more wins.
Yeah, and some of it can be attributed a little bit to the team style. Ever since Cloud9 brought in Jensen to replace High about 2.5 years ago, he has been funneled the majority of Cloud9's resources in the mid and late game.
True.
And even though TSM does play around Bjergsen in the early game, towards the latter stages, you will see Doublelift and Hauntzer taking a larger share of the farm. than Sneaky and Impact would be doing on the Cloud9 side. So there's slight stylistic differences there that can contribute a little bit to it.
And even what we're seeing right now in the current iteration of these teams, Jensen's the guy we're always looking at for the big carry. Jensen's the guy you're looking at to put the team on his back. Bjergsen, on the other hand, picking things like Galio, picking things like Zillion, much more comfortable saying, okay, I'll step back from the front line, I'll step out of the spotlight, I can count on my team to carry.
Yeah, and they are trying to be a jack-of-all-trades team in that sense. And I think Bjergsen has walked that line really well in the past, not so much in last split. Like when Bjergsen won the MVP of the 2016 Summer Split, it felt like he was doing that. Still winning lane, but playing very heavily towards the team. And that's what they're working towards getting more of out of this split.
Let's see what they can do now that we make our way into the draft for this first game of this best-of-3 match. We've got Zach and LeBlanc banned away first and foremost. Zach has just become constant ban every single time. I don't really remember the last time that I saw him get through in a high-profile game because nobody wants to risk playing against that.
Yeah, I mean, he was nerfed on patch 7.12, but then there were buffs to the Locket and Stoneplate combo, which works so well on him, so it continues to keep him in the ban phase. Not really any surprises as of yet, with most of the highest pick ban champions being banned away right off the bat.
Yep, mid-focus coming out from Cloud9, keeping LeBlanc and Syndra off the table, while Kennen will be the second ban from TSM, and the last one in Cloud9's first rotation will be the Galio that's so flexible.
Yeah, not wanting to first pick that champion because you always do have the option as the blue side to leave a lot of power picks up. Cloud9 looking for a standard fare against TSM in at least the first game.
TSM banning Caitlyn away also means that you're not going to see any of those infinite siege type of situations. You're not going to see any of those things where a team falls behind and then turtles up behind Caitlyn traps forever. But Cloud9 deciding they're going to go ahead and lock Elise in before anything else, get that powerful early game jungler, as TSM responds with Jhin in the bottom lane, who's been seeing a lot more popularity from Tahm Kench to keep him safe.
Yeah, we really have seen a small resurgence of Jhin, and TSM as well has upped their priority on Tahm Kench fairly substantially, even though it's a very power pick spot in the draft with the first two choices on the red side. There is a small amount of countering when you're up against an Elise, who's a very pick-heavy champion. As long as she doesn't land that cocoon on Tahm Kench, you can basically get rid of that CC by devouring it.
Looks like we're going to see a spooky Shadow Isles duo locked in for Cloud9's bottom lane, grabbing the Kalista and Thresh combination.
Yeah, and I actually like Kalista into Tahm Kench because even if they devour the AD carry, during that time you can still stack up a lot of threat on the Tahm Kench, and the thick skin mind game is actually really difficult because once it goes away, Kalista presses E and the Tahm Kench is dead. So I do like this duo early on from Cloud9, and Kalista is something Sneaky has a ton of experience on.
We're going to see the picks mirrored roll for roll here early on. Bottom lane and jungle picked up by both sides as TSM will respond, picking up Lee Sen for Svenskeren. He's so incredibly effective on this champion. We actually heard from him last week. He's surprised that teams aren't banning it away any more often than they are. Yeah. And he kind of wishes they would so he could get more practice on other champions. But when they leave it open, he's perfectly fine play in this. We've seen the kind of things he can do with it.
I mean, it is a little ridiculous at this point, actually, when you look at his win rate on the champion. He's played it so many times this split, and I believe only lost like one game or something on it. But I can understand why teams wouldn't ban it against him because they think, well, he'll just do the same thing on Elise, or we don't want to deal with the Galio, the Syndra, or the LeBlanc. I mean, in this game, contract says he's going to be able to handle Svenskeren's Lee Sin, but they're banning away 3 mid lane champions against Bjergsen.
Now that we've entered into the second part of the bans, we're going to see a little bit of a different focus. Lucian banned away by Team Solo Mid. Lucian's very flexible. You can see him as an AD carry, a top laner, a mid laner, pretty much all over the place. Rumble banned away by Cloud9.
Yeah, just for some added context, 9-1 this year, in this split rather, in games for Svenskeren. So if I was Reaper, I would ban it, but Reaper always mixes up his pick ban, especially in 3-game series. You want to see how he's playing Lee Sin on the day, and then you have chances to adapt down the road.
TSM actually going to ban away both of those malleable AD carries that can go into solo lanes and have other roles throughout the game. Lucian and Corki taken off the table by them, while Cloud9 will focus strictly on the top lane, removing Shen and Rumble from them.
Yeah, and now you wonder whether or not TSM is blind picking Hauntzer's top lane or Bjergsen's mid lane. You have to make that choice against Cloud9 when you have these matched pick and bans in the early stages. Jensen's Orianna has been so good this year. Yeah. I'm actually okay with this pick of Orianna first, even though typically you want to counter pick the mid lane, only because they banned away so many mid laners already. Hard to find a very good matchup against Orianna.
We always do expect people to go for the counter pick mid lane during the second part of the drafting phase, but it seems like if you don't go for that, Orianna is always the pick that you get first. Yeah. Orianna's just so safe to go as a blind pick. There's not a lot of things that destroy it. But Cloud9 is deciding they're going to take Victor in as that mid lane matchup.
Yeah, resurgence of Victor. This is a very classic mid lane matchup, the Orianna versus the Victor. I think typically the Orianna does win this slightly early, but once Victor can get to hex score, he will be able to shove in at a very appropriate pace. So expect very high CS totals on both of these mid laners.
Renekton picked up by Cloud9, a very ferocious top laner. Whatever TSM decides to draft here has to be aware of that classic Renekton-Elise combo and dive potential that we see be so devastating in these matches.
Yeah, and we get to see Renekton Fiora often because people consider it a skill matchup that can swing wildly in either direction. Most of the time we've seen this matchup in NA, the Renekton has won. So you can see the Fiora Hubbard ends up going with Gnar actually for I think a little bit more flanking potential because I think, or sorry, I meant Kled when he locked that in.
They're both crazy little Yordles. It's a fair mistake. Any one of us could make it.
Anyway, with the Kled up there, I think that's not necessarily a pick for the lane. It's very much a pick for team fights because I expect Impact to win that lane with Renekton.
Definitely going to be interesting to see how the two top laners play out these bruiser, fighter, more carry style of champions as opposed to something that it would be more of a tank. Ever since the advent of the changes to Dorian's shield, we have seen less of the pure tank top lane situation, a lot more of these fighter type champs, and today's game's going to be no different.
Yeah, and I really wonder what position these lanes are going to settle on. I do feel like TSM's mid lane should push a little bit, but you always have to be fearful of the map control that Smoothie and Contracts can get with the Elise Thresh combo. The pick potential of those two roaming together is so high, it can create lane pressure for you.
Exactly, and let's not underestimate Svenskaren's Lee Sin either. Even if he doesn't have somebody to roam around with him like a Thresh, he's still on this Lee. This is still, like you said, his 9-1 champion. 90% win rate is just bananas. That's crazy to be able to do that in pro play. But he's on it this game, and Cloud9 has their work cut out for them trying to shut that down.
Yeah, the second matchup of Cloud9 and TSM so far this split is going to be the last time we get to see them before they may or may not play in playoffs. So the first time they met up, TSM 2-0'd them, Cloud9 wants revenge.
And let's talk about whether or not, talking about these teams going to playoffs and the rough starts that they had at the beginning of the split, everybody was a little bit concerned after they both started off with those rough week 1s and week 2s. But now, as we mentioned heading into this, they have been on one hell of an upward trajectory, especially TSM, as the crowd chants wildly for them on a 10-game win streak. This team is on fire.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people have been sleeping on TSM early on in the split here because they had that lackluster start and Doublelift didn't seem to come in and kind of fix all their problems. But they have, as you said, won 10 games in a row, which is a rather impressive streak. Going to be hard for them to maintain it this week, though, as the schedule gets so much tougher. Cloud9 now, Immortals tomorrow.
There actually is a discussion that some people are having. Immortals #1 in the standings at this point in time. But some people are saying, with TSM's current win streak, are they secretly the #1? And this is the week that they might be able to prove it and say, we're not secretly the #1, we are #1. Haunter and Impact just having a little bit of fun here before the minions spawn topside. Svenskeren hanging around to make sure it doesn't get any dirtier than it already has.
No recalls interrupted there, but the ward was placed early by Haunter, which I think is a very valuable ward to scout out the Elise, especially with how the lanes need to play around this. We have seen so many gank variations from so many different junglers this split, especially kind of after what we saw at MSI, where there were a lot of really peculiar jungle routes. I think a lot of people in NA have continued to add variations to that. In this game, just pay attention to how much of a pull these guys can get. Look at all the time Haunter spent on the Raptors there for Svenskeren, because getting the jump on those early ganks can be so valuable.
Yeah, having your jungler show up to a lane 10, 15 seconds before the other guy can be the difference between making a play and having a play made on you. Very, very important to make sure that those guys get out the gate as fast as possible and be able to influence those lanes, especially on picks like these. Lee Sin and Elise, both these champions have such huge potential to snowball the game. You really want to give them every tool possible.
Yeah, and with the ward early, TSM can surmise that the Elise started on Raptors, but they can't figure out much after that, because Elise is such a versatile jungler with fairly low mana cost. You can go Raptors Red, Scuttle Crab with an experienced Quint and get a level 3 gank off, so gotta be very careful.
Now there's something you almost never see, Jat. TSM on the losing side of the fan vote, 47% to 53%. Cloud9 fans showing up a little more in force at the start of this match.
Yeah, Cloud9 has been consistently challenging TSM in these votes. Whenever we see it, I believe at the NA Summer Finals, it was 50-50 some of these times.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Very interesting seeing them now, 53%. Can they back it up and get a win?
Always stays very close. And the guy on your screen right now, Jensen, going to be very important for getting that win. The guy who's been putting up the stats so far for Cloud9, their big carry. You can see Contracts showing up here to try to give him a little bit of assistance, if at all possible. But Bjergsen smelling something maybe a little bit fishy, hanging around on the other side of the lane, and Contracts won't find anything.
Well, he's smelling something fishy because he was able to shove in the first wave, get a quick ward in the brush in the river, and see Contracts running forward there. So they're able to get some question mark pings saying, hey, he's somewhere in this side of the jungle. Then they spot him with another ward that has been left behind at red buff. So TSM with very good predictive wards that also pay off by showing them where Contracts is.
Jungler tracking can do so much in a matchup like this, especially when you have these lanes that can be very snowbally and skill matchup intensive. Give one guy a slight advantage, and all of a sudden, your opponent's ability to outplay is quickly minimized. Sneaky and Smoothie staying pretty much even down here in the bottom lane with Double Lift and Biofrost, as Bio's going to move up in that brush, try to zone these guys away a little bit, provide Double Lift with maximum amount of safety as he farms up here.
Yeah, also got to note the Doran's Shield versus Doran's Blade options between the Kalista and the Jhin. So many people have still been going with that Doran Shield because of the innate regen, but Double Lift having a lot of faith is not going to get poked out by pesky little spears flying through from Kalista. Here comes Sven.
Ooh, close there. Jensen with the flash away from the Sonic Wave, keeping himself all right, but Contract shows up over the wall, getting some nice burst down. Lee Sin forced to retreat away here. Remember, Jensen does not have a flash to try to follow this up with some cheeky bursts, so.
Yeah. A lot of respect there by Jensen. So often when a Lee Sin will gank him in the early game, you'll actually see him use Ghost instead of Flash and then rely on his mechanics to dodge the skill shot. Here, though, against Svenskeren and Svenskeren going to the close range, I think almost a rare respect Flash by Jensen. We'll see if they can punish that now the Flash is down.
Contracts thinking about the potential of punishing that, still hanging around this mid lane. Just in case Sven comes back, he wants to be there, make it a fair 2v2. But it looks like Svenskeren has no intention of sticking around that long. Decides to head back to base, shop up a little bit, grab that Tracker's Knife so he can get that extra vision control down around the map. Also give him more mobility as he can ward hop to those wards placed down by it. See how much of a difference that makes for him as he continues to try to look for opportunities to make plays here. Gold dead even between the teams. Very close farm, like we said in the bottom lane. Mid and top lane, though, a little bit different. About a 10 CS lead for Impact over Hanser. Bjergsen saying the same thing for his own lead over Jensen. And this is just what was mentioned earlier. Jensen has phenomenal laning stats, but Bjergsen is one of the few people that can beat him.
Yeah, and I think in this matchup as well, Victor's something that turns on much more in the late game than in the early laning phase. So as long as Jensen keeps it close, he's doing his job here, especially when having to defensively flash away from a Lee Sin gank. I think he's doing very well. And then when you look at the top side, I think this is also playing out the way you expect it to. The more Impact can win this CS and keep lane pressure without dying to any ganks, the better it is for C9.
And looking back at why Victor originally fell out of the meta after he was just such a critical component of it for so long, the price raised on those Hex Core upgrades. Getting that second part of the laser that just instantly clears the waves became more difficult in your first couple of buys, so it does delay that part where Jensen's able to properly compete. But now he's going to be in some trouble since Garen looking to make his appearance right back into mid lane yet again, but now has to retreat away from the Chaos Storm. Contracts looking to come in. But the flash away from Sven keeps himself alive.
Yeah, it looks like they flashed at about the same time. They were trying to get that execute on him. No shockwave burn from Bjergsen.
Meanwhile, 2v2 ends up costing Smoothie his own flash, trying to make a play onto Bio and Double Lift, but the damage from those two a bit too extreme.
Yeah, C9's got to be a little careful until Sneaky hits level 6, then it won't really matter that Smoothie is down his flash because they'll be able to Fates call him. But a lot of attention being paid to this mid lane right as they both hit 6. Now there is an ultimate discrepancy, but a hook landing onto a very non-scared Biofrost.
Sneaky takes the lantern, gets himself away to safety.
My,
as topside Contracts looking to find the damage into the stun, into the burst, and goodbye Hanser. First blood for Impact.
Wow, Hanser getting demolished in that lane. Can't even get a recall off and dies between his turrets. This is the Elise Renekton combo that I think is so prevalent lately because of how effortlessly they can chain the CC together. Whether it's the Renekton W or the Elise Cocoon, it's a kill if you're landing one of them first, and they can convert it there on top.
You saw exactly how it worked, and that was with Impact not even having shop yet. He got that kill with a Dorian shield in his inventory and nothing else.
Yeah, so he'd already dismounted him, which is so critical right here. And the minion aggroes towards Contracts, which allows him to find the angle for the Cocoon. I think Hanser thought the minions would block, so therefore he didn't flash. But the melee minions are the ones in front. They will run towards the closest target, and that's great understanding by Contracts.
Exactly. Needed to pull that minion the same exact way you saw him do it right there in order to make that play successful, and that's why Contracts is one of the best, getting himself and his top laner on the board here early. Still, though, despite the first blood with assist money going towards Cloud9, the gold is dead even. TSM is not allowing themselves to fall behind thanks to that. And now they're looking for Earthquake.
Yeah, well, I think the pressure of having Shockwave up over Chaos Storm for a while did give Bjergsen a bit of a lead in that mid lane. But then also, the Flash, the Fire Frost, and Doublet were able to force created advantages in both of those lanes, and they're trying to convert that with a Mountain Drake right here. Considering going in on Smooth, they're going to go.
They are going to be looking for this one, seeing if they can find the kill, and they will. TSM equalizes this game 1-1, and now they'll find that objective as their reward.
And Svenskeren doesn't make that play on any other jungler in the game. That is something that is absolute comfort, and it's going to be a punished attempt here by Contract. Svenskeren's racing up there. Hanser has to leave the turret.
Hanser very respectful of the damage and stun potential that could be coming out from these two. He remembers what happened at the previous attempt at making his way back towards this tier 1. Now the rest of the team on their way. Contract's going to be bear trap on a rope as Svenskeren closes in, and that is going to be one squish spider. Hanser grabbing the kill and getting himself back in the game.
Boy, that was almost too easy for TSM. They don't even lose damage on the mid lane turret. A definite overstay there by Contracts, clearing out that control ward. Allows Svenskeren and Bjergsen to casually roam up and secure a kill. They don't burn a single summoner spell and just the Kled ultimate to get him down. Contracts had no flash and really no business sticking around there after initially pushing Hanser off the turret.
Impact popping the ulti up here in this 1v1 against Hanser, trying to see if he can take him down solo. Hanser does have a red buff, but now dismounted. He's really got no choice to be able to win the fight. Impact waiting for those cooldowns to come back up. Not really too concerned about it right now, but he knows Svenskeren's likely coming up here. Doesn't want to bite off more than he can chew, give up a free kill. Instead, he'll just opt to clear out the wave and accept that.
Yeah, Impact would have continued that fight if Hanser didn't have the Lee Sin backing him up in the jungle, because Impact would have been in the position to win that trade. The difference a jungler can make, that's not even something that'll show up in the stat book either, because Svenskeren was so far away that that's not even going to count for jungle proximity, but it still allows him to clear that farm and get a little bit more to complete his teammate.
And those kind of subtleties are what can really change the outcome of a game. Even if, like you said, there's no way afterward to measure it, but now Biofrost could be in some serious trouble. Smoothie goes over the wall, brings Contracts with him. And that is another kill going away at Cloud9.
Such a nice CC chain there. Cocoon into Gravity Field. And then Thresh would have been on the way, but...
Uh-oh!
Counter.
Jensen might find himself solo killed by Bjergsen here. Drops down the Gravity Well, but it will not do the trick. Bjergsen will find himself the solo.
Ooh, just a little bit of sloppiness there from Jensen. They didn't have ward control, and Bjergsen went miss from the mid lane. It's just a very classic mid lane play. Whenever someone roams, if he's not matching the roam, watch out when you're coming back to lane. Didn't want to lose time, and now they're going to continue on a Contract.
Oh, Contract's taking a lot of damage from that initial burst. Svenskeren looking to finish him off before safety arrives. Svenskeren now sidestepping away from the death sentence, looking to get himself out of this one if at all possible. Sneaky and Smoothie wanting to pursue, but without Fate's Call and the death sentence having already been spent, they got no way to chase him down.
Great sidestep by Svenskeren, buys a ton of time for Bjergsen to push that mid lane turret, really starting to take control of this lane now, hitting Morellonomicon, and just now having Jensen complete his first Hexcar upgrade while also having no magic resistance allows Bjergsen to always get the first shove on the lane. It's still going to be a while before he can kill that turret unless he lands a Shocker on a Jensen, since Victor now clears the wave so fast, but it does buy map pressure time. Jensen can never walk up to contest the wave. He can only clear it once it hits his turret.
Speaking of waves hitting turrets, Hanser dangerously close to losing his top lane tier 1. It's almost going to be Cloud9 turret first blood just off of that minion wave. 48 HP left. Could be an objective call for Cloud9 to go up there and try to take that if at all possible. You can see Svenskeren hanging around though, just in case.
Yeah, you really got to ask this question now as TSM. Do you try and salvage Hanser, or do you just give it up? Because C9 want to fight up here. This is where they have their advantage.
Hanser could be in some serious trouble here. Pop the ulti, trying to get himself away. Impact going to be taken moderately low, but Contracts and Jensen are able to make the play now. Looking to turn it into a double if at all possible. Jensen with the flash for it, and they find the tier 1 as their prize.
And they get the first turret as well. That is Jensen's way back into the game. Double kill plus sharing that gold. Still going to be down in gold against Bjergsen because of the CS, but a huge play. That play is a textbook example of why junglers often don't come to your losing lane, because things can go bad very quickly.
Now TSM getting the opportunity to fire back on the bottom side, putting some damage into this tier 1. Biofrost and Doublelift, very scary on this combination. Up 20 CS over their opponents. Doublelift going for a crit-heavy build as opposed to some of the stuff we used to see with Jhin with lethality and other items. But here's a replay. Monster's fate.
Yeah, and Bjergsen just doesn't have vision of Jensen running up there. Notice the control ward into the river in the mid lane allows Jensen to get there. They see him now, but it's already too late. Svenskeren attempts to disengage. Even with the ward hop, Jensen is huge. Flashes for the auto attack after his Q, and a quick double kill plus turret.
I am really pleased with this series so far, Chat, because we are seeing both teams just make plays back and forth. It's going blow for blow for blow. One team makes a play, the other team's able to respond, which is exactly what you hope for, seeing two of the teams that are always consistently among the top in NALCS have their head-to-head matchup.
Exactly, and most of the gains, so to speak, have actually been made with the punish or with the counterplay. When a play is pulled off by C9, like the kill they got on Biofrost in the bottom lane, it is then countered by Bjergsen as Jensen is on his way back. So these are actually the counterplays, or the things that these teams need to be able to watch out for, because there's been a few moments in this game that you could definitely classify as sloppy play, but you love seeing the initiative of going for the plays and making things happen. The initial play have been very hard to counter most of the time.
Sloppy play doesn't always look the best itself, but watching a team capitalize on it is always fun, because they do have that perception. They can make those calls and say, this is an area where they have a weakness. We can exploit that, take advantage of it, and see if we can build ourselves our own edge out of that one, as Impact moves his way towards the mid lane, but a couple of skill shots fired off, going to ward him away for now. Turret count tied up 1-1. Cloud9 currently with a 1,000 gold lead.
Oh boy.
Finds some good damage on to Sven. The chain CC comes out, Contracts grabbing himself, kill number 2. 100% KP on this guy.
Absolutely accurate with those cocoons so far this game. Just Svenskeren wandering around by a ward, and Jensen doesn't even get to participate in that, even though Smoothie had thrown the Dark Passage for him. Mountain Drake just now coming up, goes down right away.
And that's first world problems. When your jungler does too much damage, your mid laner can't even get an assist, picking off that enemy jungle. They grab the Earth Drake as their reward for it. Here's one more look.
Pretty gorgeous. In a control ward, he sees a ward placed over the wall. Natural inkling is to try and get a hit or two on it. Fight against your instincts against Elise Thresh, especially when they're both missing on the map. Contracts and Smoothie have been teaming up very well.
And that chain CC was just perfect, too. As soon as the cocoon expired, the death sentence made contact, and Sven had no way out. Flash cocoon in the mid lane. Bjergsen now in trouble. Jensen looking to catch up if he can. Laser will find him, but not quite enough today. Bjergsen walks away with his life, but he's chased away from the mid lane turret.
Oh, max range cocoon right there. Bjergsen barely able to escape, but it costs him both of his summoners. Jensen does have to be a little careful because he's already down his turret, but he's definitely clawing his way back in CS this game.
Yeah, he's not falling any further behind. This sort of 20-25 deficit was what he had at a previous point, and it's exactly what you were predicting, Jad. You said it's going to be a little bit bad early. He wants to keep it as close as possible. He's done that, and now the bleeding's been staunched. If you continue this rate throughout the game, you stay 20 CS behind, it's not going to be a big deal 25, 30 minutes into the game.
Exactly, and as long as Victor's in the lane, he's going to get all the CS, because he just has to accurately shoot his laser, and it will kill pretty much everything. So Jensen should be good to continue farming up. It's more about whether or not he can find the windows to roam for kills to become very fed in the late game.
And honestly, these two's performances very similar right now. 2-1-1 compared to 2-0-1. Jensen just having that death from where he didn't properly respect Bjergsen's roam potential earlier. But other than that, these two both having a lot of contribution to their teams. Bjergsen, of course, with 100% kill participation on his own squad, putting in work as you would expect him to on a champion like Orianna. We talked earlier about how TSM is comfortable putting him on non-carry champions, putting him on more of a supportive role, but when you've got somebody like Bjergsen, you're definitely not going to be shy about putting him on the kind of AP carry that can win the game either.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And quietly as well, Doublelift and Biofrost are taking the bottom lane. We've seen very little action down there, since most of it has been predicated around the mid and the top lane. And now you can see C9, knowing the turret's down in the bot lane, knowing TSM is going to be in a recall pattern, just immediately turn for that Rift Herald, especially around the part of the map where they're strong, which is the top lane right now, seeing Impact's advantage.
And they got 3 different people up here. Rift Herald is quite a quick take. We'll grab that one, no problem whatsoever, no contest. Contract's picking up the eye, and we'll have to see how successfully these guys can use it. Rift Herald's one of those interesting objectives because it's a 2-part objective. First, you've got to make sure you can secure it safely, and then you've got to use it properly to actually get the reward afterwards. Rift Herald himself only gives, what, 25 gold?
Yeah, only 25 gold. On the next patch, it will be 100. Saving Smoothie from the Shockwave.
And that is the power of Callista Thresh. It's so hard to catch either one of them out. Callista will Fate's Call Thresh, Thresh will Dark Passage Callista. It makes everything very complicated.
Yeah, but even just that Shockwave diminishes C9's ability to use the Rift Herald properly in the mid lane. It's going to be really difficult for them with the way they have the soul lane position. Haunter!
Oh, nice job from Impact, flashing in front to stop the charge from getting Haunter away. Now more help coming in from Contract, still looking to burn him down if they can. Flash out from Haunter to stay alive.
So flash for flash and ult for ult. Not much actually gained by C9 at the end of that one. And the CS actually getting pretty close. Meanwhile, knowing Lee Sin is up there and Lee Sin is down here, here comes the push.
TSM going for the tier 2. They might not have a Rift Herald, but they don't even think they need one.
But Rift Herald's going to be going top lane. This is actually really clever by Cloud9. They should be able to at least match this, knowing there is a flashless play.
They'll grab that one nice and easy. Rift Herald just does so much damage to that initial headbutt unless her health is diminished first. Normally takes off about 45–50% of a turret's HP, and there's not a lot you can do to defend when you're already behind like that. Monster really suffering this game. 150 CS to 193. 1 and 2 compared to 1 0 and 2. Impact doing exactly what we were looking at him to do this game. Control early, keep the advantage, keep Haunter off the wave.
Yeah, and this is one of the best performances we've seen from Impact in the first 20 minutes this year. He's actually been getting smashed in a lot of lanes and dying a lot, but little jungle attention shown there. Also had a favorable matchup and was able to play it positively. The problem now for Cloud9 is actually the opposite of what their problem has been most of the year. It's Impact is the only one winning, and how do they actually advance the rest of the map rather than the rest of the map is winning and the top lane losing and holding them back. Very hard to make plays in the middle and bottom side of the map when they have lost both of those lanes.
TSM now moving around the river, seeing if they can push themselves into enemy territory, maybe set down a couple of wards. Control ward placed down by Cloud9, though, will pick up on that vision, clear some of it away. Sven and Bio still hanging around, seeing if maybe they can make a pick here as Doublelift's been rotated towards the top side to push into that remaining tier 1.
Yeah, this is where the game really gets interesting because the points of strength are shifting, and Cloud9 need to match this, preferably with the Renekton. You can see the total gold total is very close. Total gold total. Everyone has rank 2 ultimates, and I think Cloud9 should want to fight if they can get a plane.
Well, they're getting the cocoon. Impact wanting to go in, doesn't quite go just yet. The ball thrown out keeps them zoned away. The threat of that alone from Bjergsen is enough to cancel the initiation.
Yeah, I mean, right now, TSM is getting the 4-1 with a losing top laner, so they're just going to try and keep C9 occupied up here in a 5v4, and C9, if they don't get anything out this, is actually giving gold over to TSM since there's a lane they're not farming.
Monster hanging around bottom side, trying to shove that out, collect any farm he can. He had a 40 CS deficit earlier, has shrunk that down to 20 now. Yep. Exactly the cost of what you just mentioned. Not farming that side lane, allowing Haunter to do it without any pressure. Means he'll get a chance to catch up a little bit here. Third Mountain Drake of the game is spawning right now. Both teams currently having one. Whoever can find this one is going to have twice the objective pressure as this game goes on. Cloud9 is a little bit slower on the rotation, but they're all together.
And they're checking into the spot of the map where they don't have ward control, so this is actually very difficult for them to do as they try and brute force their way through the control wards and avoid getting picked off, but they've made it to the Drake. We could see a fight here.
TSM has the Drake down, almost dead, still looking to secure it. They've got it thanks to Spin. Now, what's going to happen in the fight? Cloud9 looking to go, Sneaky taken low. Chaos Storm onto the entirety of the backline of TSM as Curtain Call opens up. Sneaky's on the way for the damage, more shots going to be flying, but he's not dead quite yet. And everyone disengages.
Man, mid lane showdown right there. Bjergsen landed the big shockwave on his Sneaky and Contracts, and then Jensen did work with his Chaos Storm and Death Ray, nearly killing Doublelift during his Curtain Call. C9 don't get the Drake, but they do get the mid lane.
C9 will at least go objective for objective in that one. They lose out on the Mountain Drake, but they get the tier 1. Ties that turret count up 3-3. Puts them back up at about a 1,000 gold lead, but Now they've got to keep it in their minds that TSM's going to have that much more Baron clearing power as we get further into the game, further into the point where the Baron dance becomes a focus.
Yeah, and this is the hype game we were waiting for, Captain Flowers. This is going to be interesting, though. It looks like Hanser got spotted right there. Don't know if C9 can make it in time. Impact should start teleporting in on that ward now.
This is exactly what we were talking about. Double Mountain Drakes means early Baron for TSM. Teleport canceled by Impact, and Cloud9 yields a massive objective only 22 minutes in.
You have to be able to understand the power of these Drakes, because when you look at TSM's team composition, it doesn't look like they actually have that much Baron threat. There's no Callista, there's not a Cassiopeia or a Malzahar or one of those things that treads. But the Double Mountain Drake does. The 20% extra true damage you get to do those objectives means the 22-minute Baron is paper, and they just kind of sneak in through the back. As soon as there was an inkling that something should have been happening there, Impact should have teleported in, because TSM, there's no way they have total knowledge, and the teleport would have most likely scared them off there, but they make the smart call and they get rewarded.
And now they're set up in an absolutely beautiful spot. 5 members with Baron buff. You've got Double Lift and Biofrost pushing down the top side. Sven and Bjergsen making their way towards that spot as well, looking to push this as 4, while Hanser will go either mid or bottom to start up that traditional 4-1 Baron split. Even though he's not incredibly strong on his own, he's practically caught up to Impact in terms of functioning items. Tabby, Cleaver, and Titanic Hydra completed for both. An extra Null Magic Mantle on Impact, but that does nothing in the 1v1.
Totally agree. If Hanser can keep Impact occupied, or if he just teleports to a team fight, because they know that Impark's teleport is down after that Baron sneak, so they gain more out of just the Baron from that engagement. They also gain teleport damage.
TSM will take the final Cloud9 Tier 1 off the map, bringing their turret advantage up to 1 over their opponents, 4-3 in that count. 1,500 gold lead now over Cloud9 as they push further down the mid lane, looking to grab some Tier 2s. When you still have anything out of the base standing and you've got Baron buff, you want to try to push those objectives, collect some of that standing money that's hard for your opponents to defend.
Yeah, but even with Baron, it's hard to push down Victor. And
Very
he's
true.
just scaling up and up and up in this game, so you can see no damage really done to any remaining turrets by TSM with this Baron buff.
TSM rotating around the enemy jungle, seeing if maybe they can find anything. Biofrost looking to sweep away some vision, make Cloud9 as blind as possible, make them scared and have to guess what they're walking into and whether or not it's dangerous, and it does get TSM a Tier 2.
Yeah, impressive doing this with only one sweeper as well, since Sven Skaren has held onto his warding totem for more mobility on Lee Sin, mainly just rotating back and forth with raw power, but you gotta watch out.
Uh-oh, that's gonna be trouble. Biofrost trying to save him instead, flashes forward and doesn't get a whole lot out of it. Getting himself away from that one, but that's the flash of your support and the life of your jungler for nothing. Cloud9 with a nice pick.
Sees him with sweeper.
Oh, and he gets double lift as the other TP completes away. Double lift now in a massive amount of trouble. Cloud9.
And this is contracts, man. Cocoon onto Biofrost, one-shotting him, then not even having a ward, but getting the vision with the sweeper through the wall, seeing the red outline, and throwing a Cocoon to interrupt the recall right there. Such a clutch kill to really just shut down this Baron play, and a shockwave that comes early from Bjergsen.
A little bit mistimed on that shockwave, but monster performance from Contracts this game. Honestly, the guy's been all over the map, still part of every single kill that Cloud9 has to their name, more than pulling his weight this time.
Yeah, and the AP Elise, when there's no QSSs or Mikhails on the side of TSM, it doesn't matter what point in the game you're at. If he gets the Cocoon on the squishy target, they're going to burst it, because it just requires one long-range spell from Jensen and the execute combo from the Elise, and that guy's gone.
I mean, you saw just the basic Elise combo take off 75% of double his health. Now, Hanser and Sven Skaren looking to find Jensen, if at all possible. There comes your kick. We're going to finish him off with the damage. The shutdown over Sven. The return kill from Contracts as the fight continues. Impact here in the middle. Biofrost going to be forced to pop the thick skin, but it's Sneaky who's dead next. Bio still keeping himself alive as Contracts is shut down. A nice deadly flourish looking to come through onto Impact, but no lockdown from that one. And 3-for-1 TSM.
Yeah, in case you forgot, Bjergsen's fed this game, because it looked like that fight was going to turn around, as Jensen did get a lot of damage off and Sneaky started dancing around. But as the short range AD carry, as soon as Bjergsen entered that fight, he deleted Sneaky, who was yet to build a magic position. So now TSM get their push.
TSM grabbing that final Tier 2 from Cloud9. There are still 10-second death timers on the 3 members who died, which means TSM going to be pushing into the enemy base. They'll find that tier 3, not sticking around for the inhib, deeming that a bit too risky. Their Baron power play only yielding 1,200 gold, which is less than Baron itself is worth, but here's what happened with this catch.
Yeah, they see an opportunity to get Jensen with Renekton in the bottom lane and Thresh in base, so they just go straight on Jensen. He doesn't have his ultimate yet, so getting him out early is huge. And Sneaky didn't have too many options, especially after he was eaten. And watch this combo. They spit him out into immediate burst from Bjergsen, so not much Sneaky could really do to escape that.
TSM back on the neutral objective game again. 3 Drakes compared to 1 from their opponents. You can't stack any more than 3 Earths, so the Cloud is the one that shows up for number 4. Final Drake of the game, aside from Elders, of course, is going to be Ocean, spawning about 6 minutes from now near the 34-minute mark. But TSM currently enjoying a 3,000 gold lead. That'll shrink up a little bit as Impact finds his tier 1.
Yeah, really wondering if TSM or C9 are going to continue to look for fights, knowing the game is still close and it's in a pretty volatile point. One wrong step means a lot when there's multiple Mountain Drakes down on the map, because it's that much easier to end the game off a push when the turrets fall that much faster. Both teams have plenty of tools for picks. I do want to comment a little bit on Doublelift's Jhin build. He's actually gone with the Shiv rapid fire cannon build that you see pretty much out of Caitlyn's, but Jhin a much different type of champion. This is a very move speed heavy Jhin build. Essentially, when you crit a normal attack on Jhin, you still get that bonus move speed to walk in between auto attacks. So it's not actually the highest DPS build, so to speak, since he doesn't actually get attack speed to fire through his shots faster, but still a lot more mobility when he does get the crits.
Will allow him to navigate through those team fights, get the damage onto the targets he needs, which when you're up against somebody like Sneaky who has so much inbuilt mobility being Kalista, that can be the difference between catching him with that last critical auto attack.
Yeah, and it also means your first shot on him is going to hit so much harder. You get the range from the rapid fire cannon, the burst from the static shiv. It can also crit, and that allows you to just keep pace in a situation where you can be a short range carry. Not if Jensen isn't dealt with, because Jensen will just one-shot Doublelift as he walks close.
And you know what, Chat? I want to harken back to something that you said in Champion Select after the first couple of picks were locked in. We were talking about the Svenskeren, Lee Sin, the crazy win rate, how Contracts could deal with it, but now Smoothie potentially going to be caught out here. Curtain Call opening up. Fade's Call looking to save Smoothie if at all possible. More shots coming through. Smoothie going to be hit with those, but it's Haunter who's a little bit too far up as he's barely going to be kept alive. Sneaky taken low. Cloud9 keeps themselves safe, and Haunter barely hobbling away from that.
That is a very unhealthy Kled walking away from that fight. And we can see how the game is still very close there. Doublelift not in the fight there, opening up with his ultimate, so unable to use any movement speed he would have to chase down. TSM have the Baron control though.
Ooh, Contracts just got close enough to fire off that little baby spiderling to check, and it's a good thing he sent that one in instead of himself. TSM now looking to start up Baron for the second time this game, daring C9 to try to stop them. Haunter making the TP in here as Cloud9 still has injured health on Contracts and Sneaky and Smoothie. Deadly Flourish working its way out into the fight. Gravity Field thrown down. Svenskeren, 2/3 HP missing from him. Baron now rapidly healing back up. TSM's attempt stopped.
Very dicey point in the game right now. They know how quickly they can take Baron, and they know C9 is unhealthy. They're actually mostly waiting on ultimate cooldowns to come back up. Now we have Chaos Storm, Shockwave, Dominus. A lot of things have come back up, so the fight can be much more lethal if they continue this dance.
This is going to absolutely explode if one team just finds that small window to make their opening gambit. Cloud9 still
it's so tough.
a little bit
TSM
further out. Here comes the charge. Haunter trying to pull that trigger. Smoothie going to be caught out here. Nice Chaos Storm into the middle of everything. Svenskeren brought low, but Contracts dead first. Bio looking to be taken down before he can fix skin, but he gets it out, and a big shockwave comes through and takes down Smoothie. Now Sneaky so low, he's almost going to be going too, but Impact is dead first. Jensen and Sneaky in full retreat. The curtain call opens up, and execution is coming from downtown. A double kill for Haunter, and TSM takes the clean ace.
And this could actually be the game. Look at Biofrost shooting to the bottom side. They have a minion wave. They have the double Mountain Drakes. They could push to end.
This is the power of one well-executed team fight, Jat. TSM goes from a clean game where anything could happen to a game where now they're pushing onto the Nexus turrets. Number 1 is down. Number 2 is dropping. Smoothie trying to stop these guys if he can. Contracts coming back, looking to find some sort of damage. The minion wave not where it needs to be. TSM wanting to finish this one off. Contracts able to get in there, grab a kill on the Svenskeren, but another good shockwave. Cloud9 loses 2 more members, and TSM will take game 1.
TSM now move their game win streak to 11. And so many good shockwaves from Bjergsen during that game. The showdown between Jensen and Bjergsen. He gets the first pick of the two. Jensen does not have a counter for that Orianna. And Bjergsen, throughout the game, made the correct team fight choice time and time again.
And let's not just talk about his offensive potential. 0 deaths the entire game. He was never giving away any of those opportunities to his opponents. We talked about the counter plays throughout the game of capitalizing on mistakes that their opponents made. Bjergsen was never the one making those.
Yeah, only deathless player on the map. And it's not for lack of trying, because C9 threw multiple ganks towards that mid lane, and Contracts was on fire in that game. Vision control between Elise and Thresh, so many tools that can pick people off. Still a great game, but I think because of the multitude of Mountain Drakes we saw, it had a fairly quick conclusion after that big fight.
Well, give us their thoughts on that game number 1, let's go ahead and check in with our analysts, see what they have to say.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. TSM winning game 1 in a late game team fight that fell their direction off of a big ultimate from Bjergsen. But I want to look at this matchup through the eyes of the laners, because that's how we came into the matchup today. We talked about those CSD stats between Jensen and Bjergsen and how historically they've performed against each other. But a lot of that can be affected by the lane matchup itself. And so before we dive into it, I want to identify what we could expect out of the lane matchups in the solo lane. So let's start with the Victor and the Orianna matchup.
And these are always kind of affected by junglers too. Victor versus Orianna is one of those ones where you shield and try to trade as effectively as possible, but it's really up to the junglers to disrupt it. We saw Contracts look for a gank very early on, didn't even pull the trigger on it, and decided to go back to routing. And then Svenskeren came in, got a flash, and then they both visited. So it's just constant jungle attention, but definitely Svenskeren had a larger effect on that lane early on, which tilted the matchup.
But this specific matchup, would you say that it's favored to one side, should go even, is a skill matchup
Orianna,
in isolation?
Orianna very, very early on, and then when Victor is able to just wave clear and be a non-interactive lane, he can just do that and be able to actually possibly burst other squishies out. So overall, it's Orianna early, but I don't think it's anything that's like, oh, it's a counter pick, oh, it's anything like that.
Still largely even. How about in the top lane, Renekton versus Kled? Jat had mentioned that he expects Renekton to win out early.
Oh yeah, once again, like Kled loses a lot of power when you're able to dismount him and you have those short trades. And Renekton has such short cooldowns that you get Kled to like half HP and you're like, all right, next time I fight him, I'll dismount him. His power goes very far down. I'll wait 5-10 seconds until my cooldowns are back and you go back in. And you keep him under turret the whole time where Kled does lack the wave clear.
So there you see it there. We've got the CSD as well as goal differential. I actually believe that what you're seeing on that graphic is incorrect for impact. Those are the Bjergsen CSDs and goal differentials, 29 and 566. Impact actually had 35 up CS, as well as 1,000 goal differential at 15. But anyway, we kind of wanted to show you guys the discrepancies in the lanes where TSM is finding their advantage in the mid lane, Cloud9 is finding their advantage in the top lane, which is kind of atypical for them, at least in this summer split, revolving mostly around Jensen in finding their success.
Yeah, you saw the Contracts tried to help Jensen out and then had to reverse some pressure. But I do think it's very, very, very important that you look at where the junglers went, because Svenskeren kept going mid, and then Contracts went mid and said, okay, let's go top, because the Elise Renekton combo is just very potent at diving and shoving waves in, especially against Kled. So I feel like it was jungle attention that really upset those matchups and made them kind of hyperbolic, where normally you would see small advantages that don't get pressured that much, but it was because the junglers are there.
And that's where the mind game of jungling kind of takes effect, right? This is game 1. We'll see if the junglers make the same choices.
Does he get Lee Sin again?
Yeah, first of all, stop giving Svenskeren Lee Sin. He moves to 10-1 with this victory. Absolutely absurd performances. We saw that red jungle, over the wall kick. Again, Jat mentioned that's a play he's only comfortable making on a champion like that. Let's put him onto something else and see how he reacts. But either way, the junglers intelligently moving to the lanes in which they had advantages, and that's, I think, why the game was so even for so long, and eventually we got to this point where the game hinged on, a single play. Let's talk about one more play before we get there, though. Jensen roaming to the top, knowing that he's not going to find his advantages in the mid lane, chooses to abuse the top lane. 2 kills up here, plus first turret.
Yeah, play to your winning lane. I love how Jat talked about this on the broadcast when it happened, was Svenskeren shows up to help his losing lane, which sometimes can work out in your favor, but I think it's too high of a variance play. You'll lose the 2-on-2, even if it's just Elise there, and then if you have that 3-on-2, the numbers advantage is just overwhelming. So do not play to your losing lane, play to your winning lane, because you win the 2-on-2s.
All right, but it was pick after pick after pick, because both teams were very well equipped to do so, until ultimately we land at that 30-minute last team fight, 5-on-5, where Bjergsen lands an unstoppable ultimate here. Sneaky just getting a little bit out of position right next to the ball. We'll see as the play develops.
Yeah, they both have pick compositions that can start fights in the blink of an eye, but this shockwave was key because right there, Sneaky jumps forward, and then there's a shockwave onto 3 there, and they just get completely obliterated as they were kind of routing TSM at that point. But it's the critical shockwave chasing an Orianna through a choke point is something that, you know, it's probably up there in that, like, rules of League of Legends. 1, don't chase Singe. 2, definitely don't chase Singe. 3, dodge the bullets. And 4,
I love it.
avoid choke points for the Orianna on the enemy team. But what I really liked about the C9 comp and the TSM comp here is that it's picks back and forth, but it's whoever got more out of those picks, right? It's if you got a turret versus if you got Baron, who has to reset the map now? And I think that that was what we saw from TSM, was the understanding of we can start these fights at any time. Fights will happen with this composition, but it's when you take those fights and what you get.
And you see it there on the gold graph. Every single spike, whether it be, you know, those beginning blue spikes up, is C9 getting a pick and then making something big off of it in terms of advantage. But then it swings back to TSM after they make picks and take turrets themselves. And you've got that back and forth, which is indicative of C9 TSM matchups. They're always very back and forth and very exciting. So now I want to turn our attention here to game 2 as Bjergsen picks up player of the game for his performance on Orianna 5-0-7. Sure, he played fantastically, but it didn't feel like this was necessarily a win that came from any one specific player. Again, you know, they had individual winning lanes on both sides, and then it was about who played their advantages more smartly.
Yeah, and I think the people that were in disadvantages and what they did with it. Because you saw Jensen at disadvantage, loses his turret early. All right, I guess I got to roam or find a window of pressure where Bjergsen can't see where I'm going, and they help him out with wards. Whereas Hauntzer loses a whole bunch, gets killed early, gets killed again, gets Svenskeren killed, loses his turret, and then Hauntzer later on in the game, after picking up some side lane farm, knows when to pull the trigger on the ultimate with Kled to start these fights. Because these fights, even at the highest level, with those ultimates become unavoidable, and they know how to execute on them.
Absolutely. I just learned, so one last thing, Ray will be subbing in for Impact here in Game 2, so we're returning to that roster. Of course, Ray did get to play against TSM earlier in the split, as we mentioned. What are your thoughts on how this changes the top lane? Because Impact was doing just fine up there, at least in the early stages of the game.
That's, in my memory, the best performance that Impact has had so far this split in terms of CS. They were able to play towards him, just wasn't able to convert an advantage completely, but if the key to beating TSM might be through the top lane right now because of what you just saw, then maybe you sub in Ray, you have the chance to play a Fiora, maybe a Renekton that, you know, he knows how to split push a little bit better in those situations. So it's one of those things where I never understand what Reaper is thinking in those moments. Maybe it's a red side thing, maybe it's a blue side thing. But I definitely think that Ray played better against Hauntzer in spring. But right now, I feel like Impact definitely had one of the best games he's had so far.
Either way, we're getting a different look from C9 here in Game 2. We're going to step away for a quick break. When we come back, it's Game 2 between Cloud9 and TSM. Don't go anywhere.
But who is the better AD carry? Double rift, sneaky.
As topside Contracts looking to find the damage into the stun, into the burst, and good by Hauntzer. Uh-oh. Counter. Jensen might find himself solo killed by Bjergsen here. Drops down the gravity well, but it will not do the trick. The impact going to be taken moderately low, but Contracts and Jensen are able to make the play now. Looking to turn it into a double if at all possible. Jensen with the flash for it.
Season with Sweeper.
Oh, and he gets double lift as the other TP completes away. Double lift now in a massive amount of trouble. Cloud9.
I'm 5 seconds away, 5 seconds away. I have shield for Dennis. I'm dead, I'm dead. I'm ulti 7, cut up. Spin him out. Granted, and we win.
I'm really low.
Nice.
Bio looking to be taken down before he can think skip, but he gets it out, and a big shockwave comes through and takes down Smoothie. Now Sneaky so low, he's almost going to be going too, but Impact is dead first. Then TSM will take